What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q here from Retro Q Gaming, and well, today we are back to lay a little bit of a verbal smackdown on one of these selfish, little disgusting companies that thinks they can get away with all kinds of crap. And yes, of course, it is going to be one of the ones who we are going to slaughter for inappropriate usage of physical media. Now, surprisingly enough, these type of videos are usually reserved for Nintendo and everyone around them because of their terrible platform design using the absolutely crappy proprietary game cards. But no, this time we're going to have to go with Xbox. Although technically I suppose this one is down to 505 games, but it's on the Xbox and it specifically pertains to the Xbox version of a game. But I'm still blaming 505. I'm not blaming Xbox exactly for this one. Well, what are we talking about anyway? Well, we are talking about Control Ultimate Edition. That game that's kind of plagued already with being, well, the whole terrible upgrade path that say, hey, even if you have the base version of the game, or a digital deluxe bundle of the game, or you have the base one and bought the season pass and all, well, we can't give you a free upgrade for it. You have to buy the Ultimate Edition, re-buy the Ultimate Edition in order to get a, quote, free, unquote, next-gen upgrade. Not really free if you have to buy the entire game again. And then, of course, that's all compounded by the fact that, oops, what will we accidentally gave everyone free upgrades, even though we said we couldn't, but then we revoked them. But yeah, you see, Control is not having a good time when it comes to next gen and all that as well. But let's bring it back to current gen using Control Ultimate Edition. Now, this will be relating to the physical versions of Control Ultimate Edition, and how specifically one version of the game will not have all the content on the disc. But the rival platform will. So what are we talking about here? Let's give examples. Well, Control Ultimate Edition on PS4 will have all the base game and all the DLC coming in at just under 50 gigabytes, included on the dual layer Blu-ray disc. Comparatively, on the Xbox, the game will be over 50 gigabytes and will not be able to fit the entire base game and both DLCs on the disc. So if you want to play all your content that you paid for on that disc, you are forced to connect to the internet and update, aka download the rest of the game. This is something we see a lot of the time on Switch, because developers will use smaller cards because of the terrible proprietary system Nintendo use, making bigger cards more expensive. But that's not really the case with Blu-ray. There are millions and millions of Blu-rays pressed every single day. Blu-rays, by comparison, are absolutely dirt cheap wholesale. I've seen numbers with as low as 10 cents per Blu-ray. And even at smaller quantities and smaller orders, you're still looking at, from what I've seen anyway, number-wise, 40 to 50 cents. So it's really no excuse for all of this. Now, apparently 505 Games have put out a statement talking about this, and they have blamed Microsoft because apparently something to do with the Xbox One's compression system, it will not allow them to get the disc any smaller, or at least all the content on the disc any smaller. Whereas the compression systems used on the PlayStation 4, it can allow them to shrink it under 50 gigabytes and fit on the disc. Now you might be thinking, but Q, this is a dedicated stationary home console. Who doesn't have this connected to the internet? And yes, for the most part, you are absolutely correct. But here's where I take exception and I take issue for this. It's not the point. You pay for all this content, you should have it available. Let me use one of the ones I love to use as a Switch example from back in the day. Hell, I say back in the day, it still goes on to this day. So it all still applies. Years and years and years from now, when all the servers are turned off for the Xbox One in this case, or even the Nintendo Switch, and you pop a certain game that requires a big download in order to complete the actual content of the game into your Switch, and you try to play it and SpaghettiOs, you can't get by the third level. Why? Because the rest of the game isn't on the card. And then compare that to something like, I don't know, let's use a notoriously broken and buggy game, Xbox One's version of Battlefield 4. Now you can say what you want about the quality and all of that, and yeah, like I said, it's a buggy absolute mess of a disaster, but the important thing is if you put your disc in and the servers are gone and you have no way to get the updates or the patches or the DLC or whatever it is, you still have access to the full entire base game that you paid for. Which is not the case for Control Ultimate Edition. This is just an absolute nutter shit show from the greedy 505 Games. Personally, I hope no one supports this. After all, Control was a pretty mediocre game as it was, and I hear it ran absolutely awfully on the consoles. So to me, it's not even a game worth revisiting, especially when you have to pay that price for a next gen upgrade. 505 games can get fucked and lost in the dark, deadly forest of Bright Falls.